Hello, my friends. My name is Jack Descartes, and this is Sentinel Circle. Thank you for being here today. We're going to go ahead and cut right to the article. We're going to learn about self-talk today. So we've talked about in the past things like saying no, setting boundaries, all that stuff. Okay. We're going to talk about self-talk. Now, this is kind of, an internal monologue, that kind of stuff. The one thing that is important for confidence is being able to, it comes from inside, really. It comes from here, and you have to be able to bring yourself up. A lot of people, the self-talk that they do, and I've seen it even recently. In the next video that we're going to do, I'm going to talk about homelessness. And that's the one thing I've noticed about people in that kind of situation is they really talk themselves out of a lot of things. I'm not saying all of them. I don't want anybody to think that. This is just a general baseline of what I've seen, but not everybody. But we're all guilty of it too. I'm even guilty of it myself. So we're going to go ahead and just go right through this real fast and then talk about it. Okay, so self-talk. Many people are conscious of an inner voice that provides a running monologue on their lives throughout the day. This inner voice or self-talk combines conscious thought and unconscious belief and biases, provides a way for the brain to interpret and process daily experiences. Our self-talk can be cheerful and supportive, or negative and self-defeating. Self-talk can be beneficial when it's positive, calming fears and bolstering confidence. Human nature, unfortunately, is prone to negative self-talk, including sweeping assertions like "I can't do anything right" or "I'm a complete failure." Like I said, a lot of people go through this. You get a couple defeats under your belt, and it wrecks your confidence, and you start thinking that you can't do certain things. But we'll continue and kind of talk about it here in a second. Why self-talk matters. Some people believe they can credit their success to having a strong inner voice. In some cases, even a critical inner voice can push individuals to achieve by raising awareness of internal and external obstacles to achievement. Over time, though, that type of self-talk can take a toll on one's confidence, fostering shame and limiting personal growth. Is it okay to talk to yourself? Many people use self-talk, either internal or aloud, to motivate themselves, and research shows it can be beneficial. And I do believe that. It can be beneficial to be your own advocate. That's really what this is being your own advocate. If done properly, though. In a study, people who used the first person when talking to themselves before a task were less effective than those who spoke to themselves in the second or third person. Creating psychological distance in our self-talk then can help us calm down and face challenging moments, which that's interesting that it really does matter between the first and the third person. First person obviously is saying I, me, that kind of stuff. Whereas third person is saying, Jack's doing this, Jack's doing that kind of stuff, in case you didn't know. I can't assume anything, you're a very intelligent individual, but I got to assume that there are people that just don't know. It happens, we're all unique and individual in that regard. How can I make my self-talk work for me? You can make your self-talk work for you by closely monitoring it. It's easy to allow self-talk to become critical or dwell in second guessing. That happens to me quite a bit. When this happens, research shows we become less successful at finding creative solutions for problems, and others may come to doubt us as well. Correcting your self-talk when it is unconstructive can keep it focused on boosting you. Okay, we got two more here. Let's go ahead and read all of them. What are the most useful kinds of self-talk? When self-talk focuses on how we can thrive and not just survive, it can provide essential motivation to achieving goals. Self-talk that helps us take a wider view of our lives and opportunity rather than narrowly focusing on threats, and self-talk that acknowledges and directly addresses our doubts and fears have been shown to promote happiness, well-being, and success. That's good. How can I keep my self-talk positive? Self-talk can veer towards the negative when we think back to past situations in which things do not go well, and when we ponder a future full of things that can go wrong. Research finds that when self-talk focuses on the present momentum instead, and on seeing that momentum and its opportunities as valuable, it more effectively helps us reach our goals. And that goes to a solution that I preach constantly, which is learning to make your bed. Learning to make your bed, and making your bed as soon as you get up every single day is one of the quickest ways to set yourself up, because everything's about momentum. Okay, it's what is it? Newton's third law: anything at rest will stay at rest, anything in motion will stay at motion. You got to keep building momentum. You got to keep building motion, because when you do that, it's like a snowball. It builds upon itself. I mean, yeah, there's going to be days where just life sucks, okay? But if you just keep going at it, you'll notice that things work better for you every single freaking day, okay? So Jordan Peterson's right. Make your bed. Start there. You know, even if life kicks you in the groin multiple times a day, make your bed. Brush your teeth. Do those basic things. I know it seems like no duh, but believe you me, it does impact you a lot more. Okay. The other thing I would recommend is having a to-do list. I'm trying to keep it up here with all the others. It's just, I used to be a guy that's like, okay, I got a good mind. But as I'm getting older, I'm realizing I'm forgetting a lot of things, and it's sad because I'm only in my 30s, but, you got to keep that going. You know, write it down, have a space where you write those things down and you can visually look at it. Okay. If you put it away, it's not going to work. You know, have a space like a whiteboard or something, a place that's dedicated to it. Anyways, let's go ahead. The danger of negative self-talk. The problem with negative self-talk is that it typically does not reflect reality. And so it can convince people wrongly that they are not only good enough, but that they can never get better, paralyzing them into self-absorption and inaction. People with depression and anxiety frequently experience destructive and dysfunctional self-talk. The internal chatter they hear may be incessant and overly critical. Incessant. Overwhelmed by the negativity, they can wallow in painful rumination, attacking themselves ceaselessly. That's where the whole saying, you are your own worst enemy, that's where that comes from. You know, realistically, like, you know, you can be like the most vicious person to yourself, and that you need to like really work on that. Like, I don't mean to be like this, but when an obese woman constantly talks about how she would love to lose weight and all that stuff, I've always said that obese women are kind of like the perfect example of something like this. They're always talking negative about themselves and others. Obese women have the darkest of hearts. But no, seriously though, they tend to talk themselves out of a lot of things. And not only do they talk themselves out of it, but they're always bashing everybody else. So it really does take a mind worldview shift to fix those problems. In severe cases, this type of inner dialogue can be curtailed with professional treatment such as cognitive behavioral therapy, which I disagree, but, you know, who am I to disagree there? Why do we allow ourselves to be self-critical? People who believe negative self-talk is valid often imagine that it is honest, that it limits their ego, that it prepares them for disappointment, or that they simply deserve it. And this is the whole setting expectations. Sometimes you set this expectation that's so low. And I've heard people say, well, then I will never be disappointed. And that's fair, but that's really setting yourself too low. Sometimes you got to dream big. Donald Trump is always about dreaming big, because if you're going to do it anyways, you might as well go all in on it. And sometimes, life does deal you a bad deck of cards, but if you're willing to gamble here and there, like, life can be pretty amazing. Just saying. Considering whether they think it would be useful or fair to speak to a good friend the same way they can help them understand why they should stop justifying their self-criticism and instead work to silence it. How can self-talk affect your sexual confidence? Well, that's interesting. Negative self-talk can infiltrate every aspect of a person's life, including intercourse. When people are critical of their looks, fitness, or sexual skill, it can lead to performance anxiety and encounters that are unsatisfying for both themselves and their partners. Cutting off self-criticism when it starts to interfere with a sexual experience can replace it with a mindful or self-compassionate thoughts, and replacing it with mindful or self-compassionate thoughts can help restore sexual self-confidence. So what they're saying is you can really talk yourself out of being present. Okay. How does negative self-talk affect body image? The technique of reframing negative self-talk can be especially valuable when those thoughts focus on people's bodies or appearance. When such thoughts arise, one can remind themselves, everyone feels like this sometimes, but how I feel about my appearance does not determine my worth, for example. Or these are legs that move me around in the world and the arms that hug the people I love. Sure. We got a little bit left. Sorry about that. How to change your self-talk. Even harsh self-talk can be effectively challenged and sidelined. Becoming consciously aware of its roles is the first step. Then some simple and straightforward self-help techniques can be useful, such as rehearsing a more constructive inner voice with more positive tones and learning to address oneself in the third person. Using one's name instead of I during moments of inner dialogue research has found can create useful psychological distance from the emotional intensity of the self, enabling one to avoid rumination and moving forward with a greater perspective, calm, and confidence. So basically what it's saying is if you use your name rather than I, it's more of like a cheerleading section in the audience rather than just you talking yourself. I think I'm going to try that and report my findings back in a future video, but it's very interesting. And we got 3 more little sections here. Can you silence your inner critic? It says here, you can silence an inner critic, and one often effective approach is self-transcendence. When people can shift their focus away from themselves and towards others or the world at large, research shows they are more likely to ignore or turn off their self-criticism and become more patient, self-compassionate, and open to self-improvement or seeking help from others. So what they're saying is if you focus on others outside of yourself, it helps. So like, you're helping friends out. Like I said, I do this because it makes me feel better. And my hope is I can have an impact on other people's lives as well. And I will say that just by doing these things, it has created a little bit more stress in my life, but it's also been very rewarding to reach out to people who have needed help and learning about that and kind of challenging my own perspectives. In fact, we're going to do a video here in a bit. I don't know if this is going to come after or before, but we're going to talk about I'm on vacation right now, and I spent 2 days living like a homeless person in the park in South Austin. There's some people that I know there from a mutual acquaintance, and I wanted to learn what it was like to live like them. And it was very enlightening. Granted, the individual that I'm speaking about is probably making their life a little harder than it has to be. But it was very enlightening to learn that. And it was also very enlightening of the basic ways to help. So we'll talk about it. We'll discuss it in this future video coming up. But like I said, it's one of those things that I want to discuss. So let's continue on. How can I change a negative inner voice? To overcome toxic self-criticism, pay close attention to your thoughts to detect negativity when it arises, and then either try to distract yourself or challenge the self-criticism by considering whether it's even true, because often it isn't. Then replace exaggeratedly negative thoughts with more realistic statements that move you towards self-acceptance and confidence. So rather than saying you're a worthless piece of dirt, just say more, I don't know, you could do things better. I know that's easier said than done. Again, we are our own worst enemies here, but I understand what it's trying to say, but a lot of that comes from trauma too. I know that there's a very common trope in movies where a person who's facing they had like an abusive household and they're the main character, they may flash back to when their the abusive parent was treating them like dirt. Like the woman in the in Insidious, the movie Insidious, the woman in the black dress, the black wedding dress, was actually a man. I think his name was Parker, and apparently the mother wanted a girl, so she forced him to be a girl, and basically had a whole tragic. But that's kind of the whole thing is the mother kept you. It was a reoccurring theme with this demon or entity or whatever you want to call it. And like I said, it's a trope. Anyways, so last one. How can I stop beating myself up? To stop beating yourself up once and for all, it's important to distance yourself from an inner critic, perhaps by naming it and addressing it directly. Well, now it's starting to sound like schizophrenia. Let's continue. Research suggests that separating the critical voice from your own identity helps you free yourself from it. You can then introduce a new inner voice that is an ally who consciously seeks, notices, and focuses on more of the good things about yourself. So this article kind of took a weird turn towards the end. I don't agree with everything on it, but it had some very interesting tips and tricks. So let's go ahead, take a break, come back to your comments, and then we'll go ahead and discuss this article, okay? Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Hello, my friends. Jack Descartes here once again. Thank you for watching this video. We appreciate it. I just would like to take a few moments of your time. Right now, we are currently raising money to host a website. We have Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, as well as a Patreon in case you'd like to donate once or you'd like to give a continued donation. The donation on the Patreon is only $3 a month. Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal, you can donate however much you want. There is no obligation. I will continue to try to provide as much content for free as possible. Once the website is up, we will use that as a hub for all Sentinel Circle related activities, including local meetups, as well as online meetups, online discussions, and videos. So again, if you could go and donate to either Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, or Patreon, all the links are in the description. We appreciate everything you have done for us. And if you can't donate, we still ask that you like, subscribe, and share. All these activities do help even in the most insignificant ways. If you do donate, you will be immortalized in our videos and the website. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Now back to our scheduled program. We're back. Thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. So we're going to go into your comments. Excuse me. The first one is Anaxis ZTO. And it says here, would love to speak on a segment if possible. Well, my friend, you're always welcome. We will always make room for you. We do the lives on Thursdays. I try to be at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time, so that's 6 p.m. Eastern, as best as I can. It just depends on my work schedule, but like I said, I try my hardest to get there, to help out, all that good stuff, okay? So yeah, you're more than welcome to come on by. If you have a topic that interests you, you're more than welcome to send me an email and let me know what that topic is. I'll do a little bit of research on it, maybe do a video for you. And then, of course, we will have a discussion on it on that Thursday. And that offer is for everybody, not just Anaxis, not just Sam, not just Dark Cell. Okay? Anybody is welcome to do that. This is not about me. This is about everybody. Okay? So thank you, Anaxis ZTO. I appreciate it and hope to see you there one day. Godfather. Always good to hear from the Godfather. He says, welcome back, Jack. Thank you very much, my friend. NCK, Nick. LOL, my neighbor confronted me and said my children were too loud. LOL. See, that upsets me. Like, I think that it's wrong for people to get uppity on kids having fun, because they're always the same people saying, well, where are the kids outside? They're all locked up in their houses playing them video games, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you made it such a hostile environment for the kids to go do anything, right? Back in the 80s, kids, they would go onto the street and they would go do their own thing and they'd be back home, at night. Make sure you're home by the time the street lights come on, and now it's like, the only places where kids can go be kids is parks. And I'm glad to see kids at parks, but it's like, if the parent, like, I see more kids at restaurants because the parents are working than I see at a park these days. I mean, growing up, my family owned a small little country store out in the middle of nowhere, and that's what happened with me and my brother. Is during the day we go into the store and we'd help work at the store. We'd tag prices and clean and all that stuff, and we got a little bit of ice cream out of the deal. But we were out in the middle of rural God knows where. We had nothing going on. There was times where we had friends come over and we go down to the creek right next to the river, and that was probably the most dangerous thing we did, because the river was, it was strong current. You could have gotten sucked up pretty quick. I don't know. I think that it's wrong for adults to complain about kids being too loud. I really do think that that's the... Now, if it's like 10 o'clock at night, okay, then we can have a discussion. But during the day, kids need to be able to express themselves through play and creativity. They only get the chance to be kids once. They don't need to be brought down like that. So, Nick, I hope your kids get a place to hang out at. All right. Singletown from Rumble. Always good to hear from Singletown. Women divorce me and get the house. Facts. So it's not a flex. No, I would imagine that you losing your house to your wife is definitely not a flex. And in fact, this upcoming live, not this one on Thursday, because I'm on vacation right now. I'm recording this on Wednesday. So tomorrow is going to be the discussion with Dark Cell about the Kandahari Giants, but the discussion after that, is going to be about divorce. And I'm going to have some individuals that aren't normally on. Hopefully they'll join us, and we can all talk about what it's like going through divorce and all that stuff. And that conversation is going to be a very hard video to, or not video, but live stream to go through for a lot of guys. But I think it's important to discuss the whole process so people understand it, especially guys who've never been through it. They understand it. I think it'll be very healthy to get that all out as well. So we'll have a massive discussion on that, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it, but at the same time, I'm kind of dreading it. So hopefully, Singletown, you'll be there. If not, I understand. No big deal. But yeah. And then Timster, it's always good to hear from Tim. It says here, being a big time monk almost a decade, I agree more with Sam. A great many men are just plain fed up with our current social system. I much prefer solitary life over group life. I've never been lonely and enjoy my solitude. So, okay. I agree with Tim here with an asterisk. I've lived in solitude for my life. Okay. I've had like maybe a couple short-term relationships here and there, but on the whole, I've been on my own more or less. I've isolated myself immensely after college, after my election specifically, because I was just so disgusted with everyone's opinion. Basically, when I ran for the elected office in my town, I was under the impression that people would be more interested in cleaning up their backyards, and seeing how people were like, well, who are you going to vote for and all that stuff, it made me realize that people are going to get the government they deserve. And it's sad. It is absolutely sad that that's where it is now it's essentially a pardon the expression, a pissing contest over sports teams. I do recall one of Glenn Beck's books. I'm not really a fan of Glenn Beck, but he wrote a book. I don't remember what the book was, but he included a bunch of quotes between the election between, what was it, Jefferson and Hamilton, I think is what it was. I could be wrong on that. But they went at it after each other in articles in different newspapers. And, what we're going through isn't new. It's just a different coat of paint. That's really what it boils down to. I mean, hell, even what was it? Socrates was talking about the issues with democracy even back, in ancient Greece. I mean, granted, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic by definition. But the point is people want to be heard. They want to be the victors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that causes all sorts of problems. Okay. That's neither here nor there. The point is, though, is Tim hits kind of a point with this comment, which is a lot of men are fed up. I apologize. My alarm for work is still active, even though I'm not working today. I'm supposed to be off lunch now. A lot of men are fed up. I am one of those men. The only thing that I feel differentiates me, and I'm not saying this as kind of like, well, I'm better than you or anything like that. It's just, I'm tired of talking about problems. I would like to talk about solutions, and the immediate solution that I came up with was, let's talk about how to improve ourselves as men. And the more I'm researching and talking about it, the more I realize a lot of men just don't have confidence. And I think that if we gave men their confidence back, that's giving them their power back. And when they get their power back, then they can take back what's rightfully theirs. You know, men have been beaten down relentlessly for almost, I want to say, 3 generations at this point, maybe more. And I think that that's where the problem is. Now, he also makes another point here. I much prefer solitary life over group life and never been lonely and enjoy my solitude. Well, you know, Tim, with all due respect, you're an older man and you've been through it and you've gotten through it. I think what Sam is kind of pointing out is, like, we're talking about the 18-year-old guy who, you know, his parents just kicked him out. He's got nowhere to go. He's on the street. I think that's the kind of guy that, you know, needs help. That's kind of more the guy that I'm trying to reach out to, versus like older guys like myself and Tim, yourself here, because we've been through it. We know. It's just, there's no shame in asking for help, and there's no shame in offering help. And I know a lot of guys are like, well, I didn't get help, so why should I help you? Well, that should be more of a reason to help, so that way other men don't have to go through what you went through. I know it may have shaped you as a man, but, you know, not every man responds to it. And, like, you know, I went through this whole research field trip about being homeless, and I realized that I'm the exception to the rule. Tim is the exception to the rule. There are a lot of guys out there that I would argue that homelessness is kind of the rule, and we're the exception to it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But we'll talk about that in the next video. And I think that's the last comment. So let's go ahead and fade over here. So self-talk, basically, self-talk is inner monologue. And the problem with inner monologue is a lot of people are harsh on themselves, and you see it. You physically see it when someone's harsh on themselves. And I think that when you stop beating, because the problem with men is we've been through, I would argue that men go through more trauma than women do. And we take it on the chin more. But there's only so much you can do before you start baking it into your head that you're worthless, all that stuff. I constantly hear guys online talk about how they feel worthless, they feel that they're not lovable, etc., etc. That's that self-talk coming in. Okay? And I think that once you get to get it in your head that you are a desirable man, you are meant to be loved, all that stuff. I think once you get that in your head, your confidence boosts. And then, because when you're feeling gunky on the outside, you look gunky on the outside. That's the best way to say this. But when you treat yourself right, you are, I don't want to say kind, but you're not as critical. You become your own best advocate. When you clean up in here, you clean up out here, and that's when people see you as a guy that, you know, wants to, they want to be around. You know, there are online personalities that constantly cry and whine about how alone they are. And just by looking at them, you can tell that, like, you don't want to deal with them because they're just so toxic. That's really the best word to say it, is toxic. They are so toxic to themselves. You know, they think that things like owning property is something to, I don't want to say it's not to be, owning property is something to be proud of, but that's their whole personality, is they own property. You know, that's their whole personality, is they're in recovery. That's their whole personality, that they feel that they're so unattractive, and be it like they wear glasses, they're bald, whatever. And I'm not picking on, it sounds like I'm picking on a couple of specific, but I'm not picking on anybody. It's just, these are the constant complaints that I hear day in and day out. Well, I'm bald, therefore I'm unlovable. Well, there's plenty of bald people that are married, so that's not an excuse. What I'm trying to say is that's that negative talk. When you're rejected, you have a choice to make. You can either pick yourself up and say, okay, well, that didn't work out, let's go on to the next one, or you start beating yourself up and finding, reasons why you're whatever. Okay. I think that being able to talk positively about yourself is that first step to having other people notice you. And again, you're right. I can already hear the comments saying, well, it's easier said than done, blah, 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 blah. I understand that. And of course, being proud of yourself is hard, but it's not impossible. I honestly think that, you got to be kind to yourself. And I know this is kind of like the language of women and all that stuff. I get that. But if you're kind to yourself, it shows. It really does show. I myself am fat. I'm not kind to myself. I am a stress eater. I know this for myself, especially sweets. I'm big on the sweets, It's not kind to myself. It's going to wind up putting me in an early grave if I don't do something about it now. And I got to say that, 2 weeks ago I had a really nasty soda binge, but like lately I haven't had the desire to have a soda at all. And that, I don't know what happened there, but it's just like I'm perfectly okay with water and unsweetened tea right now. Is that going to change? I hope to God not. But right now it's like I got what I need. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's because I'm having a banana every single morning. Maybe a piece of fruit. Maybe that's just killing the crate. I don't know. I really don't know. But like, I'm really trying my hardest to be kind to myself and say that, I don't need to be fat. I don't need to fill myself up with junk and gross things and feeling gross all freaking day. I would like to be fit and be able to do things that I've always wanted to do, So I don't know. But the whole point of this video is I want men to have their confidence back. And the self-talk, if you're constantly talking down on yourself, you're not going to get your confidence at all. So hopefully this video will inspire you to really be critical about how you talk about yourself and maybe take some of the tips from it. There's some hyperlinks in this article, and I strongly suggest everybody go read them. Because maybe there's some other tips in there that should be covered. You never know. Anyways, I'm going to go. I got to get going and do some other things. But thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. If you like what I have to offer, please like and subscribe to the video. Even like I said, just so much as liking the video, it helps immensely. Anyways, I hope you have a good day. Please be kind to yourself, okay?